Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan. Thanks for joining us for our weekend weather update and the outlook for next week, recorded on January the 31st, and the forecast is really covering the first week of February. So let's get into it with the last day of January here on our animated wind map, and this is showing UV rays. For those who remember when I showed you this a few weeks ago, the blob of intense UV rays was a little further southwards, but as we go around the sun, you're going to find as our days start to get a little shorter, that blob goes further northwards into the northern hemisphere. But it's worth pointing out, we're still seeing that pink-purple shading around both main islands. That is extreme on the UV index, and the red shading around it is high. Even when we get into winter, New Zealand still often has moderate to high levels of UV, but worth noting we're still into that extreme level at the moment, and not a lot of wind around the New Zealand area at the moment. The reason why it's broken up here, some very thick rain clouds tracking through the Pacific Islands. So let's have a look at Saturday. You can certainly see that rain up here on the first day of February. There's flood warnings out around parts of northeastern Queensland and heavy rain around Vanuatu, New Caledonia and Fiji. But New Zealand is protected from that and from the storms in the Southern Ocean at the moment, thanks to this protective layer of high pressure, mostly covering the country. It brushes perhaps a little bit here in the south, that little weak cold front tracking through on Saturday, because there is a southerly flow that comes in before high pressure zones arrive. So often you do get a bit of a cool down just before a high rolls on in. Still got some convergence between the two highs, producing a few heavy showers in central New Zealand. Saw last night on the Met Service rain radar some decent downpours tracking through the lower portion of the North Island from west over to east. And as we forecast, some of those downpours got heavy later into the day. So not a great deal of change going across the weekend, except for that slightly cooler southerly change. Now, some areas it might be more of a northeasterly, but it's coming from south of the country and curving around locally as a northeasterly. So that's why it may still not be overly warm. A few showers in the east, and again, they could become heavy into the afternoon. Otherwise, most of the country is dry. And for those in the North Island, sort of west of the ranges, it'll probably be quite a hot afternoon. But you probably noticed the low pressure to the north of us. For now, we are protected by high pressure, both out over the Tasman Sea and east of the country. That is keeping us dry and fairly hot. Perhaps a light southerly in the south here, not quite as hot for those in the southern half of the South Island in coastal areas. Inland, you'll barely notice it, it'll still be hot. But you've got this big low here dropping south of Tonga. It's worth keeping an eye on, but I think the high, it's all kind of shaping up for that system to be pushed eastwards. There's also another low out here near the Chatham Islands, so these two systems are very likely to merge. You can see here on Tuesday, they're kind of getting all swirled together, big southerly on this side going all the way up to Fiji. So this high pressure zone in the New Zealand area sends a refreshing southerly up, although Fiji's still under that tropical weather. Tonga maybe a little bit might notice that slight change, although again, when that red line's near you, it's usually pretty hot and pretty tropical. So dry going into Tuesday. Middle of next week, that's when those two lows join up. Quite a large storm or large low pressure zone east of the Chatham Islands. The Chatham Islands got showers and southerlies blowing through for you. But at the southern part of the South Island, back come the nor'westers. Weak high pressure over the North Island keeps conditions dry, perhaps a bit of a sou'wester through the Auckland area. Nothing major going on there though, pretty settled and dry. Dry is really the theme of the next week. In a couple of maps, I'll show you the next 7-day departure from normal and you'll see what I'm talking about. But while these highs remain south of Australia and sort of pushing in southwards, does keep New Zealand a lot more protected from these storms down here over the Southern Ocean. But the further the highs drop southwards, the more vulnerable the north then gets. So we've still got a lot of low pressure up around the tropics. No major storms showing up just yet, although there's always the chance one of those lows could quickly spin into a cyclone. You've got to remember, just a year and a half ago, we saw a tropical cyclone near Vanuatu go from Category 1 to Category 5 in 24 hours, and that was before the cyclone season had even started. So at this time of the year when the water is very warm, 28 to 32 degrees or so up in the north here, that is pretty warm. But we've got high pressure down here on Friday. Could be some convergence around the country. I wouldn't lock this map in for next Friday. It's pretty messy just looking at it, but there's some low pressure around the North Island. So low pressure here, low pressure all up here. It could all join up for next weekend. Not locked in. Some computer modeling is showing it. Others are showing sort of another low pressure system like this out to our east. But either way, there's a lot going on. And our Climate Watch video is out later today. And one of the headlines is that this is a bit of a nightmare forecast for forecasters. Sometimes we've got a good sort of clear sight of what's coming through, but this year, we've got the tropics very busy, Southern Ocean very busy, and at the moment, we've got protective high pressure zones coming through. And I use the word protective in the sense of it's stopping the rain coming through. That might be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on who you are. But the departure from normal shows most of the heavy rain up here around New Caledonia, Vanuatu, Coral Sea, and some parts of Queensland and Western Australia. Otherwise, pretty much everybody is in the average to drier than average. I see red, I see red, I see red. So it is certainly going to be a drier week ahead for most parts of New Zealand and Australia, with the exception of probably Queensland, where there is some flooding risks expected. So we've got more details about what is expected this month in our Climate Watch update. Please check that out. Otherwise, have yourselves a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday next week.